Welcome to worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. We carry here the words that have been given to us and the memory of the words we have given to others. We have each known the language of love and the language of pain. Every time we write, every time we speak, we shape the world that we live in. We gather to share in the songs and the words that will keep us awake to spiritual possibility and the full humanity of all. Welcome members, welcome guests, welcome all.
Encendemos la llama del cáliz, símbolo de nuestra fe. We light the flame of our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
Holy
Here is a poem by Bill Holm titled The Icelandic Language. In this language, no industrial revolution, no pasteurized milk, no oxygen, no telephone, only sheep, fish, horses, water falling. The middle class can hardly speak it. In this language, no flush toilets. You stumble through dark and rain with a handful of rags. The door groans and the old smell comes up from under the earth to greet you again. But this language believes in ghosts. Chairs rock by themselves under the lamp. Horses neigh inside an empty gully. Nothing at the bottom but moonlight and black rocks. The woman with marble hands whispers this language to you in your sleep. Faces come to the window and sing rhymes. Old ladies wind long hair, hum, tat, full jam inside pancakes. In this language, you can't chit-chat holding a highball. Can't even be polite. Once the sentence starts its course, all your grief and failure come clear at last. Old inflections move from case to case, gender to gender, softening consonants, darkening vowels, till they sound like the sea, moving icebergs back and forth in its mouth.
Here is an excerpt from a piece that the prophet James Baldwin wrote in 1979 for the New York Times. Language, incontestably, reveals the speaker. Language also, far more dubiously, is meant to define the other. It goes without saying, then, that language is also a political instrument, means, proof of power. It is the most vivid and crucial key to identity. It reveals the private identity and connects one with or divorces one from the larger public or communal identity. There have been and are still times and places when to speak a certain language could be dangerous, even fatal. Or one may speak the same language, but in such a way that one's antecedents are revealed or, one hopes, hidden. To open your mouth is, if I may use Black English, to put your business in the street. You have confessed your parents, your youth, your school, your salary, your self-esteem, and alas, your future. Lera Boroditsky is a cognitive scientist who focuses on how language affects the mind. Her research continues to show that language determines how we understand basic reality, time and space, among other things. Boroditsky spent time with the Cook-Thaori people, an Aboriginal society in Australia. She noticed that the Cook-Thaori did not have a word for left or right. They only spoke in terms of north, south, east, west. As Boroditsky explains, in Kuk Thayore, you'd say things like, "There's an ant on your southwest leg," or "Please move your cup to the northeast." In fact, the Kuk Thayore greeting translates not as hello or good morning, but as which way are you going? To which Boroditsky says you'd reply something like, "Northeast in the far distance, how about you?" Boroditsky wondered if the way we speak informs how we understand and organize time. She gave Kuk Thayore speakers, English speakers, and Hebrew speakers a series of cards with events listed on them, earlier and later events. She then asked each participant to organize them chronologically. English speakers organized the cards from left to right, the direction that we read and write. The Hebrew speakers organized the cards from right to left, the way that they read and write. The Kuk Thayore speakers organized the cards from east to west. Language profoundly shapes how we understand the world. Perhaps this is part of why it can be so challenging to learn another language as we get older. We aren't just memorizing new vocabulary and grammar. To learn a new language is to enter another reality. It means no longer assuming that our way of seeing things is the only or the right way. As Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai puts it, "From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole or a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood." The ruined house, our former way of thinking, our former way of understanding, becomes a whisper from our past when we dig up the world we have known to reveal more layers of reality. To learn a new language is more transformative than we might at first imagine. American journalist Lauren Collins found herself needing to dig up her world after she fell in love with a French man named Olivier. Lauren met Olivier while working abroad in London. At first, Lauren felt that she and Olivier were on equal ground. They were speaking her language, but they were living on his continent. Yet after they were married, she began to feel that their relationship was out of sync. As Lauren put it, we didn't possess that easy shorthand, encoding all manner of attitudes and assumptions by which some people seem able, nearly telepathically, to make themselves mutually known. Olivier got annoyed when Lauren said simple things like, "I'm reading my book," or "I'm eating my dinner." The French don't say "my book" or "my dinner." You'd simply say, "I'm reading a book," "I'm eating dinner." To Olivier's French ear, Lauren sounded spoiled and petulant, as if saying, "It's my toy." When they hung out with English-speaking friends, the friends treated Olivier as a one-dimensional character who existed to entertain them. asking him to pronounce hamburger again and again. One night, Lauren spilled some water and she was using paper towels to clean it up, and they weren't absorbing very much, so it was frustrating. Olivier remarked, "That paper towel has poor capillarity." "What?" Lauren asked. "Capillarity, the paper towel." Lauren laughed. "That's not even a word." Olivier was just quiet after that. But the next morning, Lauren found a sticky note with the word capillarity, with its dictionary definition written beside it, and an observation that he had used the word correctly. Lauren began to realize that her husband felt like a visitor in her reality. International conversations about politics and economics took place in English. Why would Olivier not want to conduct their relationship in English? Olivier seemed so confident speaking her language. Lauren never realized he was missing part of himself when they were together. Never realized he was unable to connect with her on some intimate, sacred level. One day, after a painful linguistic misunderstanding, Olivier said, "Talking to you in English is like touching you with gloves." After that, Lauren commits in her mid-30s to learning French for the first time. The effort is incredibly slow-going and frustrating. She describes her tongue physically aching as she tries to shape it around new vowel sounds. But she sticks with it, allowing her love for Olivier to dig up her world and allow new things to grow. They discover levels of shared understanding that weren't there before, building an experience that feels like home to both of them, on the bridge between two languages and two realities. Daniel Everett, along with his wife and 3 children, came to live with the Piraha Indians in the Amazonian jungle of Brazil as Christian missionaries in 1977. Daniel ended up spending 3 decades off and on living with the Pirahans. Originally, Daniel and his wife Corinne planned to learn the Pirahan language so that they could translate the New Testament into Pirahan and convert them to Christianity. Little by little, as Daniel learned more about the Pirahan language, he realized that their plan was not going to work. Mainly because the Pirahan only value direct and immediate experience. Daniel discovers this in a variety of ways. He notices that the Pirahan do not store food. They plan one day at a time and do not talk about the distant future or the distant past. One morning, he has a conversation with a Pirahan who is recounting a dream he just had to his neighbors. Daniel realizes that dreams are not fiction for the Pirahan, not a projection of the subconscious, not a vision sent from spirits or gods, but something that actually physically happened in the night. The Pirahan explain that you see one way awake and another way while asleep, but both ways of seeing are a real experience. In his journal, Daniel writes, "They lack any form of fiction, and their myths lack a property common to the myths of most societies, namely, they do not involve events for which there is no living eyewitness. When the Pitahans speak of spirits, they are referring to trees or visiting jaguars. Spirits have physical form. You can describe them based on how they look, smell, and sound. Daniel learns that every verb in the Pitahan language has an ending attached to it that explains how you know what you are saying. Daniel gives the example: to say John went fishing, you have to attach to fishing an ending that means you heard that John went fishing, or you saw that he did, or you deduce that he did from other physically present evidence. So when Daniel tries to speak to the Pitahan about Jesus, he finds that their language cannot be used to convey his faith as he understands it. As Daniel writes, the Pitahan listening to me understood that there was a man named Jesus and that he wanted others to do what he taught them. But the Pitahan wanted to know what Jesus looked like. Daniel said, well, I have never actually seen him. He lived a long time ago, but I do have his words. The Pitahan wanted to know if Daniel's dad had met Jesus. No, he didn't. Then why are you telling us about him? Slowly, Daniel understands why missionaries have been unable to convert the Pitahan despite 300 years of trying. Their immediate blood, dirt, and sweat reality is reinforced so profoundly by their everyday language. As Daniel learned more and more about the Pitahan, his doubts began to dig up the world he had once called home. He had immersed himself in a new language, and as a result, his reality accumulated layers and changed shape. Until he found one day that he had not converted the Pitahan, they had converted him. There is a saying attributed to Roman Emperor Charlemagne that goes, to have a second language is to have a second soul. It's a beautiful idea, except maybe when we learn another language, another reality, our soul doesn't multiply, but grows more layers. Perhaps when we leave what is familiar to us, with our minds and hearts stayed on communion with another soul, our realities mingle and merge with theirs. Afterward, we find, as Lauren Collins and Daniel Everett did, that we can't go home to live in our old worldview, which we would now find small and unsatisfying. The reality of building relationships that transform us is that we breathe fresh air and experience a livening sense of renewal. When we allow our relationships to teach us new languages, new realities, we find that what we learn more profoundly than before is that this other person does indeed have a soul too, and a reality as true as ours. Once we've made this discovery, we find that we wouldn't want to return to what was once familiar, to the place where we were right and they were wrong, the place where we were wise and they were foolish. We wouldn't want to return to that hard, trampled earth, even if we could. Blessed be, Amen.
Good morning. To me, spirituality is a process of zooming in to see the details and then zooming back out to see how those details form a bigger picture. In zooming in, we seek to comprehend, but in zooming out, we seek to discover meaning. In that transition from zooming in to zooming out is where we find the gold, those aha moments, the awakenings, the connection with others, and the gratitude for being alive. Often people ask me why I have continued to practice and learn to speak Spanish across the last 40 years. And I didn't really realize exactly why until I sat down to write this reflection. What was the common theme? Why did I spend all that time? And what I discovered is that the real motivator for me spending all this time and energy is that I've had so many experiences that I can only describe as spiritual while speaking Spanish and interacting with people from other cultures who speak Spanish. Through Spanish, I've been able to understand the details of someone else's life or situation that I otherwise couldn't, and then to zoom out and find the surprising bonds and meanings that existed between us. Many of these experiences have been tremendously rich and profound, and they've nudged me ever forward, always wanting to learn more, to be able to understand more. A story from my 20s. In college, I went to Mexico to improve my Spanish in a study abroad program with several other American guys. Our host was an old, gray-haired woman who didn't seem very pleased to see us arrive. As the days passed, she spent most of her time in her bedroom and seemed generally disinterested in talking to us. The guys started referring to her as Grouchy Granny. We decided a grouchy granny must be hosting us just to get the money. If I needed something from her, I would ask her in English, gesturing with hand signals if necessary. I was so afraid of making mistakes in Spanish. Silly, I know. One night, the other guys went out and I stayed in, and as usual, grouchy granny was closed away in her bedroom. After a while, she came out and saw me sitting in the living room looking at a stack of record albums that I had noticed in the corner earlier, which I had wanted to play, but I was afraid to ask. I was surprised when she came over and sat next to me on the sofa. In English, I tentatively asked her if it was okay to look through the records. She deduced what I was asking for and nodded in assent. I came across an album from Vicente Fernandez that I knew from a long time ago and had always loved. I was about to ask her if I could play this album, but when I looked up, I saw that she had tears in her eyes and seemed shaken. After a very uncomfortable moment of indecision, I decided to take the risk, to ask her in Spanish what was wrong. Lo siento mucho, señora, pero ¿por qué llora? ¿Está enojada? I'm sorry, but why are you crying? Are you angry? Hearing me speak Spanish, her expression softened. She dried her eyes a bit and then began. I had a son that I loved so much, about your age, and he was killed in a car accident just down the road about a year ago. And the album you are holding was his favorite. You boys remind me so much of him that I spend most of my time in my bedroom just to keep my composure. I'm so sorry if I have not been good to you. Well, by now I was teary too. I had judged her harshly and had not yet really tried to have meaningful communications with her, mostly out of fear of making a mistake. We ended up talking for hours in Spanish about her son and the music we both loved and how much I reminded her of him. As I look back now, I can see what a spiritual experience that was for me. By being able to speak Spanish, I was able to access the details of her life, of her situation, and then I was able to zoom out and see how much we had in common and how we were really the same. Welcome to today's service. My name is Michael Lovett, and we're honored to have you here as our guest today. Our members would like to greet you following the service. So that we might do so, if you are visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, please take note of the guests seated near you, and after the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation across the hall in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and personal hearing assistance device on the table at the entrance to the sanctuary. And if you'd like to know more about us in our congregation, please fill out a yellow card that you'll find at the end of each row and put it into the offering basket when they are passed later in the service. Members with a life event can share so on the opposite side of the card. You'll find the cards as well as the offering envelopes on the clipboards at the end of each row. Please begin passing them down now, if you will. Some returning visitors may be interested in hearing about how to become a member. If so, please talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, welcome to the service.
Thank you, Michael. If you would like to learn more about us, you can explore the back of your order of service, or you can check out our website where you can subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, Currents. Today, after the service, be sure to visit the adult programming table in Freeman Hall to hear more about opportunities in August to engage with our summer theme of moving toward courageous connections. Next weekend is Charlotte Pride. You can stop by the table in Freeman Hall if you want to be part of our congregation's booth or to walk with us in the parade. We are here to be good company to one another, to witness the joy and the healing of others, to source our strength from this community. We are sending love to Barbara and Bill Whitman in Bill's time of serious illness. We are sending love to Lori Reed. She grieves the recent death of her mother-in-law, Joyce Lamond. If there is something on your mind today that you want to lift up, to acknowledge, celebrate, or mourn, there will be a time later in the service when the offering baskets are being passed and music is being played. You can come forward in silence and light a candle. Whatever sorrow or worry you carry with you today, whatever joy is lifting you up, may you feel held by this community. Let us hold in mind and heart those beyond our walls, people in Washington, D.C., bracing themselves to witness and protest the white supremacist rally organized to start this evening. We hold in mind the people gathering in Charlottesville, Virginia, marking the anniversary of the white supremacist rally there a year ago, honoring the lives lost, recognizing the oppressive patterns unchanged. Would you be with me in a time of meditation and aspiration? Breathing more deeply, relaxing your shoulders away from your ears, releasing the tension from your arms and your hands. We pause to take in these words from Unitarian Universalist minister Melvin Hoover. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it and build on it. We can't control the future, but we can shape it and enhance the possibilities for our children and grandchildren. We can't discern in the present the fullness of our actions and their impact, but we can be pioneers in our time, exploring fully the crevices and cracks where knowledge and new insights might be found. We can explore our spectrum of relationships and confront our complacency and certainty about the way things are. We can dare to face ourselves in our entirety, to understand our pain, to feel the tears, to listen to our frustration and confusion, and to discover new capabilities that will empower and transform us. In the spirit of the pioneer, we pray. Amen.
Language is bountiful and rich because of the generous exchange of words and ideas. Let us be generous today in our giving. The offering baskets will now be passed. Please join me in an affirmation of our faith, rising in body and spirit as you are able. Challenged by the liberating faith, we discover deeper spiritual meaning, nurture loving community, cultivate courageous connections, and partner in the work of justice.
catch my breath a moment. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the springtime. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole or a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Please be seated to enjoy the closing music.